The Starship Odyssey sliced through the interstellar medium, a solitary hunter in the vast, silent expanse between galaxies.
For 3 standard years, her crew had pushed the boundaries of known space, charting nebulae that existed only as theoretical smudges on long-range scans and cataloging stellar phenomena that defied conventional astrophysics. Captain Eva Rostova ran a tight ship, her calm authority a necessary anchor in the face of the infinite unknown. Her crew, a hand-picked collection of Earth's brightest and bravest, were veterans of the deep dark, their camaraderie forged in shared isolation and discovery.
Anüting, Elara.
Rostova's voice was low, cutting through the quiet hum of the bridge. Negative, Captain, the ship's AI responded, her synthesized voice smooth and devoid of inflection. Background radiation remains nominal. Gravitational readings stable. We are currently traversing the Cerberus Void, an exceptionally quiescent region as predicted. Rostova sighed, rubbing her temples. Quiescent was an understatement. The void was unervingly empty, a patch of reality seemingly forgotten by cosmic creation. It was on their plotted course, a shortcut deemed statistically safe, but the sheer nothingness frayed the nerves. Suddenly, a klaxon blared, soft but insistent. Energy signature detected, Elara announced.
Unidentified, non-natural origin.
Bearing 070, Mark 15. Distance approximately 0.3 light-years.
Adrenaline surged through the bridge crew.
Ensign Davies spun in his chair, fingers flying across his console.
Confirming.
It's massive, Captain. And structured. Repeating energy pattern, low frequency, extremely faint. Rostova leaned forward, her gaze fixed on the main viewscreen, which still showed only the starless black.
Source.
Unknown. Doesn't match any known Federation or xenosignatures, Davies reported, his voice tight with excitement. It's old.
The decay signature on the energy pulse is immense.
Lay in an intercept course, Ensign. Best possible speed without compromising stealth protocols, Rostova ordered.
Dr. Thorne to the bridge.
Minutes later, Dr. Aris Thorne arrived, his perpetually curious eyes scanning the readouts. Thorne was the Odyssey's lead xenolinguist and contact specialist, a man whose brilliance was matched only by a quiet melancholy stemming from a past first contact mission that had ended ambiguously.
An energy signature.
Faint, structured, and ancient, Rostova briefed him. We're closing now. As the Odyssey drew nearer, the object resolved itself on the viewscreen. It wasn't a ship in any conventional sense. It was a colossal structure, easily 10 times the size of their own vessel, shaped like a multifaceted obsidian shard tumbling slowly through the void.
No lights, no emissions save the faint, rhythmic energy pulse.
It looked dead, abandoned for millennia.
Magnify, Rostova commanded.
The image zoomed, revealing intricate, non-Euclidean geometry etched across the black surface. Patterns swirled and folded in on themselves in ways that seemed physically impossible, yet undeniably real. There were no obvious docking ports, weapon emplacements, or engine signatures. Elara scans, Rostova ordered, her voice hushed with awe. Scanning. Hull composition unknown, resonates with exotic matter signatures. Internal structure is vast, labyrinthine. Minimal power readings detected, consistent with dormant systems or residual energy. No biological signs detected. Estimated age. Captain, the dating algorithms are struggling. Preliminary estimates place its construction between 900,000 and 1.2 million standard years ago. A stunned silence fell over the bridge.
A million years.
It was incomprehensible. Humanity was still mastering fire when this thing was built.
Life support.
Thorne asked, his voice barely a whisper. Atmosphere is present internally, thin but potentially breathable nitrogen-argon mix. Trace elements unidentified. Temperature is near absolute zero, Elara reported. It's a derelict, Jax, the ship's chief engineer, muttered from his station.
A ghost ship all the time.
Jax was pragmatic, cynical, and arguably the best zero-G technician in the fleet. Rostova made her decision. Prep an EVA team.
Thorne, Jax, Jure vis ME. Security Detail, Standard Loadout.
Elara, Maintain passive sensor lock. Report any change, immediately. The shuttle Sharon detached smoothly from the Odyssey, navigating towards the monolithic alien structure. Inside, Rostova, Thorne, Jax, and 2 security officers, Sergeants Miller and Khan, checked their environment suits. The silence in the shuttle was thick with anticipation. Finding an entry point might be tricky, Jax commented, studying the external scans on his console. Surface is seamless. No obvious hatches. The energy pulse, Thorne suggested.
It must originate Summe wäre.
Perhaps an emitter, or a damaged section. Ilara's pinpointing the source now, Rostova confirmed. Seems to be emanating from a recessed area near the central axis. As they approached the designated spot, a section of the hull became clearer. It wasn't damaged, but rather different. The geometry here was slightly less complex, and a faint, almost imperceptible seam traced a vast, irregular outline. At the center of this area, nested within fractal-like patterns, was the source of the energy pulse, a crystalline structure that glowed with a soft, internal violet light. That's our door, Rostova declared.
Jax, can you interface? Interface?
Captain, this thing's 1,000,000 years old. My universal toolkit probably looks like stone knives and bearskins to whatever built this, Jax grumbled, but he was already deploying microprobes from the shuttle's manipulator arm. Trying to read the energy pattern, see if it's some kind of lock.
The probes dankset arunze violet crystal.
Jax muttered technical jargon under his breath. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Then, a low hum resonated through the shuttle's hull. The intricate seam around the recessed area began to glow with the same violet light. Slowly, silently, a section of the hull irised open, revealing an aperture large enough for the shuttle.
Well, I'll be, Jax breathed. It wasn't a lock. It was a welcome mat.
Or a trap, Miller muttered from the back. Standard protocols, Rostova reminded them.
Vipongs hot. Stay alert.
The Sharon glided into the opening, which sealed silently behind them. They were inside a cavernous docking bay, dimly lit by the same violet luminescence emanating from strips along the walls and ceiling. The scale was breathtaking. The Odyssey could have fit inside with room to spare. Strange, skeletal frameworks hovered motionless in the zero gravity, perhaps scaffolds or docking clamps for ships of equally alien design. Dust motes, ancient beyond imagining, danced in the shuttle's external lights. The air, as Ilara had reported, was thin and frigid. Pressure equalized, Jax announced. Atmosphere composition stable, though I wouldn't recommend taking your helmet off for a picnic. They disembarked, magnetic boots clanking softly on the metallic deck. The gravity was artificial, about 0.8 standard G, pulling them gently downwards. The silence was profound, broken only by the hiss of their suit regulators.
Which way?
Khan asked, sweeping his pulse rifle's light across the titanic space. Thorne pointed towards a massive archway at the far end of the bay. Unlike the external hull, the interior architecture was slightly more linear, though still unervingly alien. Walls curved at impossible angles, and corridors seemed to branch off into Escher-like configurations. Logically, primary access to the main structure should lead from the docking area. They moved cautiously, their lights cutting sharp beams through the ancient gloom. The air tasted metallic and sterile through their suit filters. As they passed through the archway, they entered a vast corridor, the violet light strips providing just enough illumination to see. The walls were covered in glyphs, intricate, flowing symbols that seemed to shift and writhe at the edge of vision.
Aris.
Rostova prompted. Thorne approached a section of the wall, his gloved hand hovering inches away. He activated his suit's integrated scanner, projecting a targeting laser onto the symbols.
Incredible.
The linguistic complexity. It's multi-layered. Semantic, symbolic, possibly even resonant frequencies encoded. He began recording, his initial scans feeding back to Ilara aboard the Odyssey. This will take time.
Significant time. Te presset deeper into the silent behemoth.
They passed through vast chambers filled with inert machinery of baffling purpose. Crystalline towers humming with residual energy, metallic spheres floating in containment fields, consoles whose surfaces rippled like liquid mercury when approached. Everything was coated in a fine layer of ancient dust. "It's like a museum," Jax whispered, running a diagnostic tool over a hovering sphere. "Or a tomb. Getting faint power signatures from some of these systems, but they're deeply dormant.
Encrypted beyond belief."
In a chamber larger than any they had yet encountered, they found them, rows upon rows of crystalline pods, arranged in concentric circles radiating outwards from a central pillar. Each pod was roughly humanoid-sized, translucent, and filled with a pale, shimmering mist.
"Cryostasis,"
Miller suggested. Thorne approached one cautiously. The mist inside swirled slightly as he neared. He activated his bioscanner. Reading: faint, degraded organic particulates. Residual DNA fragments.
"Noting viable."
He scanned several more.
"Alsesame."
Empty. If these were stasis pods, the occupants are long gone. Or they decayed over 1,000,000 years. Rostova finished grimly. "Perhaps," Thorne murmured, his gaze distant. "But the energy required to maintain stasis for that duration. And why leave them empty?" Jax, meanwhile, was examining the central pillar. It pulsed with the same violet light as the exterior lock. Glyphs covered its surface. "Captain, this looks like a central control node.
"Maibe a data core."
If there are any records, they'll be in here.
"Can you access it?"
"Accessing this thing is like trying to hack a god's personal computer with a paperclip," Jax retorted. "But I can try to interface non-intrusively. See if I can coax some data out without triggering whatever dormant defenses might be lurking." While Jax carefully attached microprobes to the pillar, Thorne focused on the glyphs surrounding the pods. His scanners worked, feeding data back to Alara, who cross-referenced patterns and structures at speeds no human could match. "Getting something," Thorne said suddenly. "Alara's found recursive patterns. It's a narrative. A history." He projected a holographic display from his wrist unit, showing swirling alien text alongside Alara's preliminary translations. They called themselves the Lumin. Those who shine, or the enlightened. Explorers, philosophers, artists. The translated fragments painted a picture of a civilization vast and ancient, spanning multiple galaxies. They weren't conquerors, they were seekers. They studied the universe, documented its wonders, and sought to understand the fundamental nature of existence. They explored further than humanity has ever dreamed, Thorne read, his voice filled with wonder. They mapped dark energy currents, communicated with non-corporeal intelligences, witnessed the birth and death of stars. Then the tone of the narrative shifted. A new symbol appeared frequently, one Alara struggled to translate directly. It conveyed concepts of emptiness, silence, absence, consumption. They encountered something. Out there, Thorne translated haltingly. In the intergalactic void. Something they called the Vodh'ya.
"The consuming Silence."
A chill traced its way down Rostova's spine, colder than the ship's frigid interior. What was it? It's not clear. Not a species, not a weapon. Described as a presence. An absence that extinguishes. It targeted consciousness, complexity. Entire star systems colonized by the Lumin went silent, their energy signatures vanishing, leaving only sterile emptiness. The logs described the Lumin's desperate retreat, abandoning worlds, consolidating their knowledge and population. They sought refuge, a way to preserve their legacy, their memory, against the encroaching silence. This ship. Thorne realized, looking around the vast chamber. It wasn't just a vessel. It was an ark. A final repository of their entire civilization. The pods weren't for stasis in the conventional sense.
"Wat ten?"
Jax asked, pausing his work on the pillar.
"Sanctuaris, Thorne whisperet."
A way to shield their consciousness, their essence, from the Vodh'ya. But the text implies. The process was flawed, or perhaps incomplete. Or maybe the silence found them even here.
"Suddenly, Jax swore."
"Captain, I'm getting a power surge from the pillar. Systems are coming online." Alarms blared softly through their suit radios, not from the Odyssey, but from the alien ship itself.
The violet light strips on the walls pulsed faster, brichter.
A low, resonant hum filled the air, vibrating through the deck plating.
Jax, disengage.
Rostova ordered. Trying. It's not responding. It's like it latched onto my probes, drawing power, initiating some kind of sequence. Jax frantically worked his console. The mist within the nearby cryopods began to churn violently. The temperature in the chamber, previously near zero, started to climb rapidly. Strange, non-auditory sensations pressed against their minds, fleeting images, fragments of alien thought, feelings of immense age and profound loss.
Elara. Report.
Rostova shouted into her comm. Odyssey sensors detect massive energy buildup within the alien structure, the AI's voice replied, laced with an uncharacteristic urgency. Multiple high-order reality fluctuations detected.
Captain, the structure's energy signature is changing. Resonating.
Resonating with what? Unknown. Possibly with the baseline energy of the void itself.
Or,
Captain, I am detecting faint, structured psychic emanations originating from within the chamber. Thorne stared at the swirling pods, horror dawning on his face. It's here.
the Vodh'ya.
It wasn't just a historical record. It was a warning.
Wie woke it up?
Or maybe it was never truly dormant. The mental pressure intensified. Miller cried out, clutching his helmet.
Make it stop. The whispers.
Con raised his rifle, eyes darting wildly.
Where is it?
There's nothing to shoot, Sergeant. Rostova yelled, trying to maintain control.
Jax. Cut the power.
Blow the probes if you have to. I can't. It's got its hooks in deep. Jax grunted, sparks flying from his jury-rigged interface. The central pillar flared, bathing the chamber in blinding violet light. The glyphs on its surface burned like white-hot brands. Thorne, shielding his eyes, saw the final parts of the narrative Elara was desperately translating flash on his HUD. Final measure. Sanctuary becomes beacon, resonance trap. Silence contained or consumes all, warning. It's a trap. Thorne yelled. The ship wasn't just an ark, it was meant to contain the silence. By trying to access the core, we've destabilized the containment. The non-physical presence slammed into their minds. It wasn't malicious, not in a way humans understood. It was simply empty. A void that sought to absorb, to erase complexity, to reduce consciousness to null state.
Memories flickered, childhood fears, lost loves, mission verlores, twisted and amplified.
Rostova felt the weight of command threatening to crush her. Jax saw schematics dissolve into meaningless static. Thorne relived the disastrous first contact, the faces of the lost crew superimposed on the swirling mists. Fall back.
To the shuttle.
Rostova ordered, shoving Khan towards the exit. Miller was on his knees, shaking uncontrollably. Rostova hauled him to his feet. They retreated, stumbling back through the alien corridors as the ship around them groaned and resonated. The violet light flickered erratically, sometimes plunging them into near darkness. Behind them, the hum intensified, and the mental pressure felt like a physical weight trying to crack their skulls. They burst back into the docking bay. The Sharon waited, a small island of familiar technology in an ocean of ancient, terrifying mystery.
Get us out of here, Jax.
Rostova yelled as they scrambled aboard. Jax threw himself into the pilot's seat, fingers flying across the controls even as he fought the psychic assault. External doors aren't responding. The ship's overriding local commands. On the main screen, the vast iris door remained stubbornly shut. The violet light outside pulsed menacingly. Use the cutting lasers. Rostova ordered. Against that hull? It'll take hours. Jax yelled back. And I don't think we have hours. The Odyssey is reporting reality distortions increasing around the structure. Thorne, strapped into a passenger seat, stared at his console, Elara feeding him the last fragments from the data core before Jax's connection was severed. Wait. The resonance. The containment. It wasn't just about hiding. It was about balance.
A specific frequency, a pattern.
He pointed frantically at the screen. The initial energy signature we detected. The faint pulse. That wasn't residual power, it was the containment field's baseline. We need to replicate it.
Replicate it?
How? Jax demanded, wrestling with the unresponsive shuttle controls.
The pillar. The interface.
You said it latched onto your probes, drew power.
Can you reverse it? Feed a signal back.
Thorne asked urgently.
Feed it what? A firmware update.
Jax shot back, sweat beading on his forehead despite the suit's coolant.
No. The frequency.
Elara, can you isolate the exact frequency and waveform of the original energy pulse we detected? Thorne pleaded.
Affirmative.
Analyzing recorded data. Pattern isolated, Elara confirmed, her voice calm amidst the chaos. Complex waveform, incorporating subspace harmonics.
Transferring pattern data to shuttle Caron.
Jax.
Route Elaras Signal trug the probe interface.
Modulate it onto a power feedback loop. Try to resonate with the pillar, stabilize the containment field. Thorne instructed.
Are you insane?
That could overload everything. Including us. Jax protested.
It's doing outere Jax.
Rostova cut in, her eyes locked on the security feed showing Miller and Khan struggling against the invisible mental assault. Do it. Gritting his teeth, Jax rerouted power, configured his damaged interface, and began transmitting Elara's replicated frequency back towards the heart of the alien vessel. The shuttle's lights dimmed as power diverted. A new vibration started, deeper, more harmonic than the threatening hum they'd fled. On the main screen, the violet light pulsing outside the closed door seemed to steady, the frantic flickering calming into a rhythmic glow that matched the frequency Jax was transmitting. The oppressive mental pressure lessened, receding like a physical weight being lifted. It's working. Jax stammered, incredulous. Power draw from the pillar is stabilizing. The internal energy readings are dampening. The door.
Rostova pointed.
Slowly, ponderously, the massive iris began to open.
Go.
Now. Jax slammed the thrusters, piloting the Sharon out of the docking bay as the door slid shut behind them once more, sealing the Lumin's ancient sanctuary, and its terrible prisoner back into silence. Back aboard the Odyssey, the debriefing room was somber. The shuttle was secured, Miller and Khan were in medbay recovering from severe psychic trauma, but physically unharmed. Rostova, Thorne, and Jax sat around the table, the holographic image of the immense alien vessel hanging silently in the center.
So, Rostova Said, breaking the silence.
We found a million-year-old haunted house. More than haunted, Captain, Thorne corrected gently. It's a prison. Built by the Lumin to contain the Vodh'ya, the consuming silence. They sacrificed their physical forms, possibly their entire civilization's remaining essence, to power and stabilize the containment field, hoping someone someday would find their warning. And we almost broke the damn thing open, Jax muttered, running a hand through his disheveled hair. That frequency Elara replicated. It must be the key. The resonant pattern that keeps the silence locked away, perhaps by reinforcing the localized reality distortion that contains it. The ship is broadcasting that signal again, Rostova stated, looking at the live sensor feed. Faint, just like when we first found it. Our interference nearly destabilized it, but feeding the pattern back seems to have reinforced the containment. We cannot risk interfacing with it again, Thorne stated firmly. We don't understand the mechanism fully. Another mistake could be catastrophic, not just for us, but potentially for a much wider region of space. Rostova nodded grimly. Agreed. Elara, quarantine all data logs pertaining to the internal structure and the control pillar interface. Mark the location with a Class Omega hazard warning, extreme existential threat, unexplored xenotechnology, psychic contagion. No approach recommended under any circumstances. Transmit the warning protocols to Fleet Command on encrypted hyperchannel. Acknowledged, Captain, Elara replied. What about the Lumin's history?
The warning.
Thorne asked. That, Rostova said, her gaze hardening, we take with us. The knowledge of the Lumin, their fate, and the existence of the Vodh'ya. that is too important to leave behind or risk losing. Ilara, compile Dr. Thorne's verified translations and observational data into a separate, secure file. They sat in silence for a moment, contemplating the sheer scale of their discovery and the bullet they had dodged. Humanity was not alone, but the first definitive proof came not as a greeting, but as an ancient, terrifying warning echoing from a million-year-old tomb. Set course away from the structure, Rostova ordered finally, her voice regaining its usual steady tone.
Maximum safe warp. Take us home, Ilara.
As the Odyssey turned, accelerating towards the familiar starfields of the Milky Way, Thorne looked back at the viewscreen where the alien vessel dwindled, becoming once more an indistinguishable point of faint light against the infinite blackness of the Cerberus Void. They carried the Lumin's legacy now, the memory of a lost civilization and the knowledge of a silence that waited in the dark between the galaxies. Humanity's exploration of the cosmos had just entered a new, more dangerous, and infinitely more profound era. The silence was out there, and it was listening.
The Odyssey warped space, leaving the Cerberus Void and the million-year-old sentinel far behind.
Yet, the silence of the alien ship seemed to have followed them, settling deep into the vessel's core and the minds of her crew. The return journey, initially anticipated as a triumphant phase after years in the deep dark, was now fraught with an unspoken tension, a shared trauma that lingered like the phantom taste of ozone after a lightning strike. Captain Rostova enforced a strict return to routine, believing normalcy was the best antidote to the profound unease left by the Lumin derelict. Drills were run with crisp efficiency, sensor sweeps were meticulously analyzed, and the hum of the ship's environmental systems seemed louder, more insistent, as if trying to fill a void that technology couldn't bridge. But beneath the surface, things were different. In the medbay, Sergeants Miller and Khan underwent extensive psych evaluations. Physical scans showed no anomalies, but their cognitive and emotional states were fragile. They reported recurring nightmares filled with crushing silence, swirling violet mists, and incomprehensible whispers that seemed to emanate from the ship's own walls. Dr. Lena Petrova, the ship's chief medical officer, logged their symptoms with growing concern, noting subtle overlaps with accounts from Rostova, Thorne, and Jax, sleep disturbances, heightened startle responses, moments of inexplicable dread. She treated the symptoms but privately worried about a form of psychic residue, an imprint left by the encounter with the Vodh'ya. Aris Thorne became almost obsessively attached to the verified Lumin data. He sequestered himself in his xenolinguistics lab, the walls covered in holographic projections of the alien glyphs. Ilara worked tirelessly alongside him, her processing power dedicated to deciphering the nuances of the ancient language, cross-referencing the historical logs with the terrifying descriptions of the consuming silence. "It's more than just an entity, Ilara," Thorne murmured, tracing a complex symbol representing Vodh'ya. The Lumin describe it as a fundamental aspect of the void, an entropy of consciousness. It doesn't just destroy, it unmakes. It seeks complex systems, minds, civilizations, even sophisticated AI, and reduces them to informational null state. The logs indicate the Lumin theorized the Vodh'ya is attracted by strong psychic or energetic resonances, Captain Rostova's near activation of the central pillar being a prime example, Ilara stated. Their containment strategy involved creating a counter-resonance, a stable energy pattern designed to neutralize the Vodh'ya's signature within a localized reality distortion field, anchored by the ship itself. But the data is incomplete, Thorne sighed, frustration etching lines on his face. There are missing fragments, corrupted files near the end. They mention anchor points and harmonic networks, suggesting this ship might not have been the only containment node. What if destabilizing this one sent ripples through others? Or what if the silence isn't entirely contained within that ship anymore? The thought sent a chill through him. His previous mission's ambiguity seemed almost comforting compared to the stark, existential horror the Lumin had faced. Meanwhile, Jax couldn't shake a deep-seated feeling of wrongness. The engineer lived and breathed the Odyssey's systems. He knew her quirks, her energy flows, her baseline operational hum better than anyone. Now, something felt off. He initiated Level 1 diagnostics on all primary systems, finding nothing overt. Yet, his instincts screamed otherwise. Ilara, run a comparative analysis, Jax requested from engineering, surrounded by glowing conduits and diagnostic screens. Compare current energy consumption patterns, milliwatt level, across all decks against the pre-encounter baseline from, say, 1 month ago.
Processing.
Comparison complete, Elara responded after a moment. Minor fluctuations detected, within acceptable parameters. Standard deviation is 0.003% above baseline, primarily localized around Deck 5, Section C, the primary shuttle bay housing the Charon. Acceptable parameters? Jax scoffed.
The Charon is powered down, undergoing standard post-mission decontamination.
It shouldn't be drawing anything beyond minimal life support monitoring for the Deccan cycle. The fluctuation is statistically insignificant, Engineer Jax. Likely attributable to residual atmospheric ions from the decontamination process interacting with passive sensors, Elara reasoned. Maybe, Jax conceded, unconvinced. Run the check again in 12 hours. And flag any EM fluctuations, however small, originating from the Charon or its immediate vicinity. He couldn't shake the memory of the alien pillar latching onto his probes, the feeling of an alien intelligence brushing against his systems. What if something had hitched a ride? Rostova sat in her ready room, reviewing the encrypted report she had sent to Fleet Command. Detailing the discovery, the Class Omega hazard assessment, and the harrowing escape felt surreal. She had omitted the more visceral details of the psychic assault, framing it as disorienting sensory phenomena, but the core warning was clear: existential threat, do not approach. She knew skepticism was likely. A million-year-old ghost ship containing a consciousness-eating void sounded like science fiction, even in the 24th century. Her console chimed, signaling an incoming priority message from Admiral Vance at Starfleet Command, Deep Space Operations. She braced herself. Captain Rostova, Vance's holographic image materialized, stern, gray-haired, his reputation for pragmatism preceding him. We've received your report regarding Anomaly Designation 734, the Lumin derelict. Frankly, Captain, its contents are extraordinary. Admiral, Rostova acknowledged calmly.
Ich stand bei the report.
The vessel is real, its age is verified by our scans, and the threat assessment, based on translated alien logs and direct crew experience, is accurate. Direct crew experience involving disorienting sensory phenomena?
Vance reiset a skeptical eyebrow.
Captain, while I commend your caution, declaring an Omega-level hazard based on ancient texts and subjective experience requires more substantial proof. The potential technological implications of a million-year-old vessel are immense. Admiral, my team directly interfaced with the vessel's systems. We nearly triggered a catastrophic event. 2 of my crew are still recovering from severe psychic trauma, Rostova countered, keeping her voice level. The risk outweighs any potential gain. The Lumin logs specifically describe this Vodh'ya as targeting complex systems and consciousness. Attempting to exploit their technology could be suicidal. Understood, Captain. However, we cannot simply ignore such a discovery. Your orders are updated. Proceed directly to Starbase 418, the nearest secure research facility. A specialized science team, Xenological Threat Assessment Division, XTAD, will meet you there for a full debriefing and analysis of your data. They will determine the next steps regarding the anomaly. Maintain strict communication silence regarding your findings until arrival. Vance out. The connection severed, leaving Rostova staring at the empty space where the Admiral's image had been. Starbase 418 was weeks away at maximum warp. Weeks trapped on the ship with the lingering unease, the fragmented data, and Jax's nagging suspicions.
Sheffield treppet between the devil and the deep void.
Days bled into weeks as the Odyssey raced through warp space. The subtle wrongness persisted. Crew members outside the initial landing party began reporting strange occurrences. Tools momentarily misplaced, flickering lights dismissed as power fluctuations, whispers on the edge of hearing drowned out by comm chatter, fleeting shadows in peripheral vision. Dr. Petrova noted an uptick in sleep aid requests and anxiety symptoms across the ship. Jax's unease solidified into certainty. The anomalous energy readings around the Charon, though minuscule, were consistent and slowly, almost imperceptibly, increasing. They weren't random noise. Elara, correlate the energy fluctuations with the Charon's internal sensor logs from the alien ship, Jax ordered, his voice tight. Correlating. Positive match found. The fluctuations exhibit a harmonic resonance pattern mathematically similar, though vastly lower in amplitude, to the energy signature of the Lumin control pillar during the initial power surge. Jax felt ice crawl up his spine. It's not residue. It's an echo. Something imprinted itself onto the shuttle's systems when the pillar grabbed my probes. He immediately reported his findings to Rostova and Thorne. Thorne listened intently, his face paling. An echo. The Lumin logs mentioned the Vodh'ya's ability to imprint on complex systems, like a psychic virus. They developed shielding protocols, but maybe the Karen systems were vulnerable during the surge. Can we detect it directly? Rostova asked Jax. It's too faint for standard scans, Jax admitted. It's hiding in the background noise, mimicking residual energy signatures. But it's growing, Captain.
Slowly feeding off the shuttle's standby power.
What can it do? Right now? Not much, Jax speculated. Minor system interference, maybe induce low-level paranoia through EM field manipulation, could explain the crew's edginess. But if it grows? If it reaches a threshold? It could try to interface with the Odyssey's main computer. Or worse. Like the central pillar.
Torne Visperet. A Resonance Cascade.
Rostova's decision was instant. We deal with this now. We can't risk bringing this echo to Starbase 418. Jax, options. Risky, Jax stated grimly. We could try a focused electromagnetic purge of the shuttle bay, but that risks damaging the Sharon permanently and might not be enough if the echo has embedded itself deeply.
Option 2, Eva.
Take the Sharon out, away from the Odyssey, and run a direct, high-energy diagnostic pulse through its core systems using a remote probe. Try to force the echo signature out into the open where we can analyze and maybe neutralize it. Neutralize it how? Thorne asked. Maybe. Adapt the Lumin containment frequency, Jax suggested hesitantly. If we can isolate the echo's specific resonance, we might be able to disrupt it with a counter-frequency pulse, based on the pattern Alara replicated. It's incredibly dangerous, Rostova stated. Exposing the shuttle's core systems in open space? Transmitting a disruptive energy pattern? We don't know how this echo will react. More dangerous than letting it fester and potentially gain access to Alara and the rest of the ship. Jax countered. Rostova looked at Thorne, who nodded slowly. The Lumin data, fragmented as it is, suggests active countermeasures were sometimes necessary. Isolation and targeted frequency disruption align with their theoretical principles. All right, Jax, Rostova decided.
Prep the Eva.
You'll pilot a work bee remotely. Thorne, you'll monitor the energy signatures and assist Alara with modulating the counter-frequency. I'll oversee from the bridge. Minimal personnel involved. Let's keep this contained. Space outside the Odyssey was an ink-black canvas dusted with diamond stars. The work bee, a small utility craft piloted remotely by Jax from engineering, nudged the dormant Sharon shuttle out of the main bay, maneuvering it a safe distance away.
Robotic arms extended from the bee, attaching specialized diagnostic probes to the shuttle's hull access ports.
Probes attached, Jax reported, his knuckles white on the remote console.
Initiating deep system scan.
Rerouting power through the probes to bypass internal safeties. If the echo is there, this should make it flare up. On the bridge, Rostova and Thorne watched the main viewscreen and sensor displays. Energy signature within the Sharon is spiking, Thorne reported, his eyes glued to the fluctuating graphs. Alara confirms resonance pattern match with the Lumin pillar event. Amplitude increasing. There it is, Jax breathed.
Gotcha, you little ghost.
Suddenly, the work bee's manipulator arms spasmed.
Warning lights flashed on Jax' console.
Interference. The echo is actively resisting the scan, trying to push feedback through the probes. Isolate the work bee's systems. Rostova ordered. Trying. It's fast. Jax grunted. The Karen's external running lights began flashing erratically, out of sequence. A low hum vibrated through the bridge deck. Impossible, as the shuttle was meters away in vacuum, yet multiple crew members glanced around uneasily. Psychic resonance detected, Thorne warned, his voice tight. Low level but spreading. It's using the probe connection as a conduit, trying to touch the Odyssey.
Now Jax. Rostova commanded. Elara, transmitze Counterfrequency.
Calculating optimal disruption harmonic. Transmitting. Elara announced.
Jax Trickgerätze Pulse.
A wave of visible distortion, like heat haze, emanated from the Workbee's probe emitters, washing over the Charon. The shuttle convulsed violently. Its lights flared blindingly bright, then extinguished. The anomalous energy signature spiked, then collapsed, vanishing from Thorne's sensors. The psychic pressure vanished instantly.
Status. Rostova demanded.
Echo signature gone, Thorne reported, relief washing over him. Completely flatlined. Workbee system stabilizing, Jax added, slumping back in his chair, breathing heavily.
The Charon is dead in the water. Totalsystem crash when the pulse hit.
Looks like the Echo integrated deeper than we thought. Purging it fried everything. Rostova stared at the inert shuttle floating silently against the starfield.
A necessary sacrifice.
Retrieve the Workbee.
Let the shuttle drift.
We'll log it as lost in a plasma conduit surge during diagnostics.
No mention of the Echo.
She looked at her tense bridge crew, then at Thorne and Jax's holographic images. We're clean. Let's hope it stays that way. The Odyssey continued its journey towards Starbase 418, the silence on board feeling a little less oppressive, replaced by the grim understanding of their narrow escape. They carried not just a warning, but the first direct proof of the Vodh'ya's insidious nature. The encounter had cost them a shuttle, but it had bought them invaluable, terrifying knowledge. The darkness between the stars was not empty, and humanity's place within it had just become terrifyingly uncertain. They were heading towards safety, but Thorne couldn't shake the feeling that they were bringing the shadow of the void along with them, forever imprinted on their memories, if not their systems. The true test, he suspected, was yet to come. Weeks stretched into warp-bound monotony, yet the rhythm of life aboard the Odyssey remained subtly out of sync. The successful neutralization of the Vodh'ya Echo aboard the Charon, and the subsequent jettisoning of the compromised shuttle, should have brought relief. Instead, it cemented a deeper, more insidious fear. The enemy was not just external, but could potentially invade their sanctuary, their technology, perhaps even their minds, in ways they barely understood. The silence Rostova imposed on the specifics of the Charon incident, logging it as a technical malfunction, created an undercurrent of rumor and anxiety among the wider crew, who only knew that a shuttle had been inexplicably lost after the encounter with the anomaly. Dr. Petrova's medbay saw a steady trickle of crew reporting persistent low-grade ailments, tension headaches, unusual fatigue, flashes of disorientation quickly dismissed as vertigo, and unsettlingly vivid dreams that often featured fractal patterns, violet light, or an oppressive sense of being watched by emptiness. While she treated the symptoms and attributed much of it to prolonged mission stress amplified by the recent unknown encounter, she couldn't ignore the clustering of specific neurological complaints. She started running passive encephalographic monitoring during sleep cycles for affected crew, comparing the results to baseline data. The initial findings were inconclusive, showing slightly elevated delta wave activity but nothing overtly pathological. Yet, it was another data point in a growing mosaic of not quite right. Aris Thorne, meanwhile, found a grim sort of solace in the Lumin data cache recovered before the near-disastrous attempt to interface with the central pillar. This data, primarily historical, cultural, and scientific observations, was deemed safer by Elara, lacking the dangerous, potentially contagious mimetic qualities of the core warning logs. Working relentlessly with Elara, Thorne began piecing together a more coherent picture of the Lumin and their nemesis. They encountered the Vodh'ya approximately 1.5 million standard years ago, Thorne explained during a progress update meeting with Rostova and Jax in the captain's ready room. Holograms of Lumin star charts and complex energy diagrams filled the space. Not as a sudden invasion, but as a gradual dawning realization. Systems on the fringes of their exploration network began to fall silent. Initially, they suspected unknown natural phenomena or internecine conflicts among less advanced species. The logs described the Vodh'ya's effect as ontological decay, Elara supplemented, displaying swirling glyphs alongside translated text. A localized cessation of coherent information patterns. Living minds regress, complex technology unravels, organized energy dissipates into background noise. It targets complexity itself. How did they fight it? Rostova asked, her eyes fixed on a diagram depicting a network of interconnected points across a galactic cluster. They didn't, not in a conventional sense, Thorne replied. They realized direct confrontation was impossible, perhaps even counterproductive, potentially feeding the silence with focused consciousness and energy. Their strategy shifted to containment and preservation. This diagram, Elara partially reconstructed it from fragmented astronomical data. We believe it represents the harmonic network mentioned in the warning fragments. Those points. Jax leaned closer, tracing the glowing lines connecting nebulae and stellar nurseries. Are those the anchor points? We believe so, Thorne confirmed. Specific locations in spacetime, possibly with unique gravitational or subspace properties, where the Lumin constructed massive containment nodes, like the derelict we encountered. These nodes weren't isolated, they formed a network, generating a complex, interlinked field of counter-resonance, designed to dampen the Vodh'ya's influence across vast regions, pushing it back into the deeper voids between galaxies. So the ship we found wasn't the prison, Rostova clarified. It was just one node in a network? Possibly the primary one, or the last functioning one in that region. Exactly, Thorne nodded. And our actions? Activating the pillar, then neutralizing the echo. We may have sent ripples through whatever remains of that network. Elara has been detecting faint, highly dispersed subspace resonance tachyons along our exit vector from the Cerberus Void, echoes consistent with Lumin energy patterns, but decaying rapidly. Could we have damaged the network? Jax asked, alarmed. Impossible to say without more data, Thorne admitted. But it implies the containment wasn't perfect, or perhaps it's been degrading over the million years since the Lumin vanished. He hesitated. There's also philosophical data. The Lumin believed consciousness itself was a fundamental force, counteracting the universe's entropic drive toward simplicity. They saw the Vodh'ya as the ultimate expression of that entropy, an anti-consciousness. Their final act, seeding the network and retreating into the nodes, was an attempt to preserve the principle of complexity itself, a final defiance against the silence. As Thorne delved deeper into Lumin philosophy, Jax burrowed into the Odyssey's systems with renewed, almost paranoid vigilance. He trusted Elara implicitly, but the AI's logic couldn't replace gut instinct honed over years of deep space engineering. The Echo incident proved that threats could bypass standard protocols. He started developing custom diagnostic subroutines, designed to look for patterns within the noise, searching for non-randomness masquerading as system errors or background radiation. His diligence paid off, unsettlingly so. He found them, microscopic fragments of anomalous code embedded in tertiary systems. A comms buffer relay, a backup environmental control matrix, even within the diagnostic systems for the warp core injectors. They were incredibly small, inactive, seemingly designed only to replicate slowly and benignly within low-priority memory allocations. When detected by his new subroutines, they self-erased instantly, leaving no trace beyond a faint energy signature. It's like digital microbes, Jax explained to Rostova, his face grim. They're not doing anything harmful yet. They avoid critical systems, avoid Elara's main heuristic scans. But they're spreading, Captain. Whatever hitched a ride on the Sharon, blasting the shuttle might not have been enough. Spores might have escaped. Rostova felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. Can you purge them?
Evertime my routines detest von, it self-destructs.
But I don't know if I'm finding all of them, or if they're just shedding copies faster than I can hunt them down, Jax admitted. It's like trying to catch smoke. Compounding the internal tension was the pressure from Fleet Command. Admiral Vance demanded regular updates, clearly impatient for their arrival at Starbase 418. Then came the preliminary protocols from XDAD. They were thorough, covering biological quarantine, technological analysis, mimetic hazard screening. But they felt woefully inadequate. They treated the potential threat as something that could be scanned, catalogued, and contained with conventional methods. They're asking for full access to Alara's unprocessed sensor logs from the derelict, Rostova told Thorne, frustration evident in her voice. Including the data streams from Jax's interface attempt at the pillar. They don't understand that the data itself might be the contagion. You have to refuse, Captain, Thorne urged. Or at least insist on extreme precautions, filtered access through Alara, letting her parse the raw data first. Direct exposure. It could be disastrous if the starbase systems aren't shielded adequately, or if the XDAD personnel aren't prepared for the psychic impact. I've pushed back, citing data corruption and potential system instability, Rostova said. Vance isn't pleased. He sees XDAD as the experts and expects full cooperation. He thinks I'm being overly cautious, perhaps even letting the phenomena affect my judgment.
The Implikation stung.
As they neared the terraced sector, home to Starbase 418, the subtle anomalies became slightly bolder. A flicker in the navigational array caused a momentary course deviation, instantly corrected by Alara but logged by Jax. Life support briefly recirculated air with an unusually high ozone content on Deck 7, causing mild discomfort before self-correcting. During a ship-wide diagnostic initiated by Jax, several bridge officers simultaneously experienced a distinct auditory hallucination, a low, discordant chime that wasn't sourced from any ship system. It lasted only a second, leaving behind a residue of profound unease. Alara, analyzing the incidents, could find no single root cause. The anomalies remained statistically uncorrelated, Captain, the AI reported, though Thorne fancied he detected a note of uncertainty in her synthesized voice. However, the frequency of minor, self-correcting system deviations has increased by 7.2% in the past 72 hours. All remain within acceptable operational tolerances. Acceptable tolerances are based on known system behaviors, Alara, Jax interjected via comm. We're dealing with an unknown influence. These aren't random failures, they feel coordinated, exploratory. Thorne felt a growing dread. The Lumin data spoke of the Vodh'ya's subtle infiltration tactics, its ability to manipulate complex systems from within, slowly undermining them before the final unmaking. Were the code fragments Jax found probing the Odyssey? Was the increasing system instability, the crew's neurological symptoms, all part of a slow-burn infection, an echo of the echo? Or was it just the strain of the unknown, manifesting as paranoia and technical glitches? The proximity alert chimed. Approaching terraced sector rendezvous point, Alara announced. Starbase 418 detected. Standing by to initiate final approach vectors. On the main viewscreen, the star-dusted blackness was interrupted by the reassuring sight of the massive, brightly lit starbase. Other Federation vessels moved nearby, beacons of familiar order and safety. Yet, no one on the Odyssey's bridge felt entirely safe. Starbase 418, this is Federation Starship Odyssey requesting docking clearance, Rostova transmitted, her voice the epitome of calm professionalism. Proceeding to designated coordinates. We are ready to commence XDAD protocols upon arrival. Her eyes met Thorne's across the bridge. They had survived the derelict, purged the echo, and carried the warning across the void. But the final transmission from the Lumin archive echoed in Thorne's mind, silence contained, or consumes all, warning. Had they truly escaped the silence, or had they merely carried its seed towards the heart of the Federation? The starbase lights seemed less welcoming now, more like the unblinking eyes of an uncertain future. The Odyssey sailed towards the station, a vessel filled with heroes, secrets, and the lingering, terrifying echo of the void. The approach to Starbase 418 was smooth, almost anticlimactic after the tension of the preceding weeks. The massive station loomed, a symbol of Federation order and security, its docking bays yawning open like mouths ready to swallow the Odyssey whole. Yet, as the ship maneuvered through the final docking sequences under the precise guidance of Starbase traffic control, a palpable sense of anxiety settled over the bridge. This wasn't a homecoming, it felt more like a surrender. As soon as the docking clamps locked in gauge, the external airlock cycled open, not to a welcoming party, but to a team from the Xenological Threat Assessment Division. Clad in imposing environmental suits that completely obscured their features, they moved with sterile efficiency, deploying shimmering quarantine fields that isolated the Odyssey from the rest of the starbase. Their scanners swept over the crew, their voices filtered and impersonal as they issued instructions. It felt less like a debriefing and more like containment. Rostova, Thorne, Jax, and Dr. Petrova were escorted through temporary bio-sealed corridors to a dedicated XDAD debriefing chamber deep within the starbase. The room was stark white, dominated by a large holographic display table and overseen by Director Lin, a woman whose severe expression and sharp gaze radiated skepticism. Several other XDAD specialists flanked her, their faces betraying a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. Captain Rostova, Director Lin began without preamble, her voice crisp. Let's dispense with formalities. Your report on Anomaly 734 presents extraordinary claims. A million-year-old vessel, a consciousness-destroying entity termed Vodh'ya, containment fields based on resonant harmonics. You understand why Fleet Command requires rigorous verification. Rostova met her gaze steadily. Director, we understand the extraordinary nature of our findings. We lived it. I stand by my report and the hazard assessment. The crew of the Odyssey faced a threat unlike anything documented in Federation history. Over the next 2 hours, they presented their findings.
Rostova recounted the discovery and the escape.
Thorne, assisted by Alara who streamed filtered data to the main display, explained the Lumin logs, the nature of the Vodh'ya, the containment network hypothesis, and the psychic phenomena experienced. Jax detailed the energy readings, the Echo incident with the Sharon, and his discovery of the self-replicating code fragments, emphasizing their stealthy nature. Dr. Petrova presented her findings on the crew's persistent neurological and psychological symptoms. The XDAD panel listened, interjecting with pointed questions focused on quantifiable data, repeatable observations, and established scientific principles. They dismissed the psychic elements as subjective stress responses. They questioned the validity of Alara's translations of an extinct language. They were particularly insistent on accessing the raw, unfiltered data from the Lumin pillar interface attempt, chafing at Rostova's refusal. Captain, your reluctance to share complete data hinders our ability to verify your claims, Director Lin stated coolly. Standard XDAD procedure involves analyzing all raw sensor logs. Your insistence on Alara acting as a filter is irregular and suggests. It suggests caution, Director, Rostova interrupted firmly. Based on Dr. Thorne's analysis and our direct experience, the raw data itself may carry mimetic or psychic contagions. Unfiltered exposure could pose an unacceptable risk to starbase systems and personnel. An assessment based on translated alien philosophy, Captain? Lin scoffed lightly. We rely on science, not superstition. As the argument grew heated, Alara's voice suddenly cut through the tension, transmitted directly to Rostova, Thorne, and Jax via their personal comms, bypassing the room's main speakers.
Captain, urgent.
I am detecting anomalous energy fluctuations originating from Starbase Data Core Sector 7 Alpha, where the initial safe logs from Odyssey are being analyzed. The patterns exhibit low-amplitude resonance harmonics consistent with Vodh'ya signatures. Simultaneously, Jax jolted upright in his seat. Captain,
my subroutines.
The code fragments on Odyssey are active. They're attempting to interface with the Starbase network through the docking umbilical. It's a breach attempt right now. Before Director Lin could react to Jax's outburst, the lights in the debriefing chamber flickered violently. A wave of dizziness washed over everyone in the room. Comms crackled with static.
On the Farwall, A-Status Display for Data Core 7 Alpha Fläche dreht. System Error, Unknown Data Korruption detested.
What is going on? Lin demanded, rising from her chair. Security. But Thorne cried out, clutching his head, his eyes wide with terror and recognition.
The Silence.
It's touching the data. Fragmented thoughts.
Lumin warnings.
It unmakes. Complexity unravels. Silence consumes all. His voice was strained, echoing the very warnings he had translated. The psychic residue within him, dormant until now, resonated fiercely with the newly awakened echo in the Starbase data core. The brief chaos crystallized into stark reality. XDAD's skepticism evaporated, replaced by dawning horror. Their safe analysis had provoked the very danger they dismissed. Rostova reacted instantly, her command voice cutting through the panic.
Jax. Seva all Odyssey network connections to the Starbase, now.
Manually override docking protocols if you have to. Initiate localized EM pulse, code gamma, around docking port 12. Modulate with the Lumin counterfrequency Elara replicated.
Aye, Captain.
Jax was already working furiously on a portable interface linked back to the Odyssey.
Elara.
Rostova continued, turning towards the nearest comm panel, addressing both her AI and the stunned Starbase technicians.
Guide Starbase Operations.
Isolate Data Core 7 Alpha immediately. Instruct technicians on generating harmonic dampening fields tuned to the resonance signature you're detecting. Director Lin, your people need to listen to my AI now if you want to contain this. Shaken but regaining her composure, Director Lin barked orders into her own comm, relaying Elara's technical instructions. Alarms blared throughout the starbase. Red alert lights flashed.
On the Odyssey, Jax triggeret the modulated EM-Pulse.
A shimmer of contained energy washed over their docking port. In the starbase, technicians scrambled, guided by Elara's calm, precise instructions, erecting containment fields around the affected data core, bathing it in counterfrequencies.
The lights steadied.
The psychic pressure Thorne felt abruptly vanished. The error messages from Data Core 7 Alpha ceased. Silence fell in the debriefing room, thick and heavy. Director Lin stared at Rostova, then Thorne, her previous skepticism replaced with grudging respect and undisguised fear. Report. She asked the room at large. Starbase system stable, a technician's voice finally crackled over the comm. Data Core 7 Alpha isolated. Anomalous resonance neutralized.
Odyssey network connection severet.
Confirmed EM pulse discharge from docking port 12. The immediate crisis was over. The proof XDAD demanded had arrived, nearly catastrophically. In the days that followed, the atmosphere on Starbase 418 shifted dramatically. The Odyssey remained under strict quarantine, but the XDAD teams now worked with Rostova, Thorne, and Jax, not against them. Elara, granted controlled access, collaborated with Starbase systems to analyze the contained data fragments from Core 7 Alpha and the residual signatures from the Odyssey systems, confirming the insidious nature of the Vodh'ya's influence. Admiral Vance arrived in person, his face grim as he reviewed the logs and debriefed Rostova privately. "Your caution was warranted, Captain," he admitted gruffly. "It seems humanity has stumbled into a conflict far older and stranger than we ever imagined." The Odyssey crew were hailed as heroes, their harrowing experience providing the crucial, undeniable evidence of the threat. They were also now the Federation's foremost experts on the Lumin and the Vodh'ya. A new task force was commissioned under Joint Fleet Command and XDAD authority, its sole purpose to understand the Lumin containment network, assess its stability, and develop strategies against the consuming silence. Rostova was assigned command, with Thorne leading xenological research and Jax heading technological countermeasures. Elara's unique experience made her an invaluable asset. In the final scene, weeks later, Thorne stood looking out from an observation lounge on Starbase 418. Below, the Odyssey rested in its quarantine dock, undergoing meticulous refits and system upgrades. On a handheld pad, carefully filtered Lumin data, newly decrypted by Elara, scrolled, fragmented coordinates, stellar alignments, descriptions of energy signatures potentially indicating other anchor points within reachable Federation space. The universe outside the viewport seemed unchanged, beautiful, vast, indifferent. But Thorne knew better. The silence was out there, ancient and patient. The Lumin's warning, carried across 1,000,000 years by their ghost ship and echoed in the minds of the Odyssey's crew, had finally been heard.
Humanity's journey to the stars had taken a sharp, perilous turn.
Exploration was no longer just about discovery, it was about vigilance, about understanding the darkness, and about protecting the fragile spark of consciousness against the consuming silence of the void.
The fight had just begun.